Today is February 27th, 2023. And last week, there were 163 reported cases of COVID-19 in Charlotte-Mecklenburg County. This shows a 15% decrease over the last 2 weeks. I am comfortable not wearing a mask in this interview.
So, introduce yourself.
My name's Phylicia Short.
And you state your physical appearance.
Oh, and I'm black. I'm wearing a blue shirt, some khakis. I got a fro, and I'm a female.
Perfect. So where's home for you right now?
Charlotte.
Charlotte.
Yes.
And how long have you been in the Charlotte area?
Since I came to Queens for college for undergrad, so 2003, 2004.
And where were you born?
Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay, so not too far.
No.
What attracted you to Charlotte?
I came to Queens. I was on a basketball scholarship. So I knew about Queens before I decided to come here because my sister also went here. So, my family were big Queens fans. So here I am.
And what's your current position here at Queens University?
I'm the assistant AD for communications.
So you lived here during the COVID-19 pandemic. Will you describe how you felt initially when you heard that there was a lockdown?
It was the spring season, which is usually busy for us in athletics. And I was also pregnant at the time. I was probably about, at that time, March, April, May. Yeah, I was about 5 months pregnant. And so when we started getting waves of like people getting sick and things like that, we had already started taking precautions at games as far as like wiping stuff down, cleaning stuff off, because I was already being extra cautious anyway because I was pregnant. And I can remember some of our staff laughing at me, honestly, for like having Clorox wipes and wiping things down the week before the shutdown. And so everything shut down. But before everything shut down, kind of like a week before, I had a conversation with my supervisor, and she had expressed wanting me to start working from home, just because of what was going on and the uncertainty around what was going on. And so I had started working from home outside of games, and I remember like that week we had a game, and I remember wiping everything down at a softball game, and everybody laughing at me, and then the next morning us hearing like everything was shut down, basically. So it was definitely out of the blue.
So tell me how you felt when people were laughing at you, to how you felt when everything started shutting down. Were you kind of like, told you so? Not really that, but like, how did you kind of feel like when people weren't really respecting the precautions you were taking?
I didn't feel any type of way, honestly, about people laughing at me because I was basically the pregnant lady wiping stuff down, not wanting to get germs at the time. But when things got shut down, like I was taking extra precautions, but I didn't think things were that serious yet. Mm-hmm. So the shutdown still surprised me because I didn't think that it was that bad. Mm-hmm. And so while I was taking precautions, I wasn't like walking around with a mask on thinking I was going to get really, really sick or anything. And so like I said, I didn't feel like any type of way about people laughing. Like I think it all kind of caught us all off guard when the shutdown happened.
So when Queens initially shut down, was there like hope that you guys would be coming back in a couple of weeks, or what was kind of the message from the institution and the athletics department as you guys were in spring season?
Well, I think it wasn't really a messaging from us as a university as far as athletics goes. It all came from the conference office and the NCAA, and we just had to follow suit. So once we realized how serious everything was, it definitely made sense. And but I think we definitely did not know how long it was going to last. And so I think that's where the uncertainty was, and people started worrying about like jobs and things then, just because we didn't know how long this was going to last.
So now that you are, picture this, in quarantine now, no longer out and about, no longer at school, everything's shut down. What was your routine look like throughout the day? Were you still working?
I was working from home up until my maternity leave started. And so I still worked from home up until probably like the middle of May. I had my son the first week of June. And so I was still working from home, and I was like kind of working a lot because I didn't know what was coming. So I was already like trying to prepare stuff for when I was out of the office on maternity leave, but I also didn't fully know what I was preparing for because, you know, we didn't know if there was going to be a fall season. So it's like you're preparing for something that you don't know if it's going to happen, but you need to prepare for it just in case. And so it was getting a lot of stuff in order, honestly, for just in case. But yeah, it was definitely uncertain times. And when the university like sent students home and things like that, then it was like, okay, this is like really serious, to a point where people are worried about their jobs at that point and supporting their families. And so I think there was definitely just a huge amount of nervousness going around as to whether people could support their families and things like that.
So as you were pregnant during this time, was there what kind of precautions did you have to take while going to appointments or to give birth? Like what did that look like, and how did you feel emotionally?
So all of my appointments leading up so with my first pregnancy, like my husband was able to be at every doctor's appointment with me. With this one, I was at every doctor's appointment by myself. He had to stay outside in the car. And so he couldn't come in. He couldn't see like the ultrasound. He couldn't be a part of that stuff, which he didn't like very much. It was, and I mean, it's awkward being in those situations by yourself or anyone. We know a lot of people go through it by themselves every day just because we know that. But for us, it was definitely different to go through. The first pregnancy we went through the way we did, and then this one was like the polar opposite, where I had to go through everything as far as the doctor's visits by myself. Now, when we went to the hospital, it was just the two of us, and that was awkward too. We couldn't have any visitors. We couldn't have anybody come by. Like my daughter couldn't come to the hospital. She had to wait till we got home to see her little brother. And so definitely a lot of things were different as far as precautions I took. Like I didn't go out of the house while up until like I had my son, besides going to the doctor. My husband did all the shopping. We did pickup orders. Like my daughter had stopped going to daycare, so we were just literally just in the house. And thank God for having a backyard.
So how did you entertain your daughter? How old was your daughter at the time?
She was 4.
So how did you entertain her? You bring her to daycare where everyone was home?
Lots of coloring, lots of drawing. We had started like kindergarten prep stuff, so I had different like kindergarten pre-K books at the house for her to start like learning sight words, colors, things like that you learn in kindergarten. A lot of outside play. I bought a lot of sidewalk chalk. Did a lot of art on the driveway, and we got outside a lot. I mean, we didn't interact with a lot of people, obviously, but definitely got outside and had fresh air and played in the backyard and things like that. The good thing is it was spring and summertime, so it wasn't like we were locked in the house because it was cold outside. So that definitely helped.
And so once your son was born, how does he kind of, like, how did you get him to, like, be kind of, interactive? Babies rely on,
right.
Facial expressions and all that. Like, how did you guys get him to adapt to the times?
I definitely think having his sister at home helped with him socializing. If he had been an only child, he would not have gotten a lot of that socializing side of things with other kids. Because after I had him, even when I came back to work, I worked from home for a full year because I didn't want to put him in daycare that early. And then by the time I felt comfortable putting him in daycare, the daycare had no spots open. And so, so I worked from home from like August to the next August with him. And that was just stressful. Like obviously we didn't have games in the fall. We started back with basketball season. I think they were the first teams that came back that November-ish, and that was kind of around the time I came back from maternity leave, probably about September. And during that time, a lot of our staff had been furloughed. Some people had left. Some people got let go. Some people switched jobs during that time. So when we came back, we had basketball for that semester, and then like we had everything in the spring. You guys remember that. But working from home was definitely not easy. I think people had this perception of people sitting at home just not doing anything when they were working from home. And some people may have been doing that. But I think for the large majority of people, especially moms or anybody with kids, it was a stressful situation. Because when does the work day end and when does it start? And when does being a mom or dad never ends? But when you have kids at home and you're working like your traditional hours and kids are interrupting that, it stretches out your work day. And in athletics, a work day is not traditionally 9 to 5 anyway. Like we can be working all morning, afternoon, and if there's games that night, we're working that night as well. And so it just, honestly, the days just felt continuous, like never ending, which was very stressful for me looking back on it.
So tell me more about that spring season, January, when you came back. Like tell the listeners.
Yeah.
How kind of all the teams were playing, and how was that a lot of work on you as your position? So
I will say everybody was definitely very excited to hear that the students were coming back and we were playing sports again. Everybody that works here was very excited because working in athletics, like you live for that. You as an athlete do as well, but we choose to work in athletics because we love the world of athletics. And so if you're not playing games, there's nothing going on. It's like, okay, like, what am I doing? And so your sense of purpose is questioned. And so when we found out we were getting the games back and all the students were coming back, we were definitely very excited. And then it kind of turned into, oh, crap, everybody's playing this semester. And with us having the amount of sports we had, it was definitely a huge undertaking. But I mean, it was a lot of work to make it work. I'm glad we were able to make it work because I definitely think everybody benefited from it. But it was definitely a busy semester. There was like a game every day of the week, or 2 or 3. And so, but it was fun. I mean, it was definitely an experience. It was a learning process. We learned a lot about ourselves through that process, what we can do, what we can't do. What we should keep doing, what we should stop doing, I think a lot of the processes that we were doing prior to that, we kind of weeded out. We were like, okay, do we need to be doing this? Like, can this be more efficient? Do we need to? And then when it ended, it was like, do we need to go back to doing that? No, like, let's keep that off the list. Like, we didn't need it. So, I think there were a lot of things that we learned in the process, but it was definitely trying times getting through that semester.
And so from basketball season in November into the spring season with all the sports playing, what was it like? Did you guys have fans at your events, or did it change from week to week? What was that process like?
So Queens had a strict policy as far as when we returned to work because we really wanted to stay open and to keep our students on campus. And so because of that, everybody had masks on in the buildings. A lot of the rules that Queens had were more strict, or they changed a lot of the rules to help keep everybody safe. And so I definitely think that everything that was put in play was necessary because it kept us at work. It kept all the athletes playing. It kept our games moving. I appreciated the measures because I was able to come to work and feel safe, and especially having a baby back at home. And so I was working from home, but I was at every athletic event. And so being able to come in and feel safe that I could come and go back home and not feel like I'm taking something back home to my family was definitely important.
Could you give us some examples of the precautionary measures that had to be taken either on the sports teams or in the sporting events that were happening in that time?
Yes. So for indoor sports, we definitely had no spectators. We had no spectators for a while for indoor sports. I feel like that carried over into the next year because there were ebbs and flows in the COVID-19 spikes in Charlotte. And so no spectators. Outdoor sports were allowed to have parents only, I believe is what we started off with. And obviously we asked that they socially distance themselves and things like that. But nobody traveled as far as like from a communications person standpoint, or so you would normally see like sometimes a team's communications person travel with the teams, or somebody come to your school to work the game for the visiting team, and all of that travel was cut because most of the teams were in their bubbles, and you don't want to get in that bubble and mess it up. So a lot of times, we kind of stayed away from the teams because we didn't want to get anybody sick. And it was interesting because I don't think we got to know a lot of the teams as well as we would have liked to during that time, or as well as were able to before, or even now. Like this type of conversation would not have been able to happen because we just kept everything separate. Everybody was just super precautious because everybody wanted to keep their seasons going. But yeah, for the most part, like even working staff was we worked with like skeleton crews for the most part because we didn't invite a bunch of third party people in to come work our games and things like that either. The media, we kept them at a distance. Like for indoor sports, they had to stay a certain amount, a certain distance away from the courts and things like that. Outside, it wasn't as strict as it was for the indoor sports. I don't even think the indoor sports got to have their parents, but we did, because of that, stream every single athletic event. So that was one thing that we started during COVID. Before that, we didn't stream everything, but during COVID, we made a point to try to get every athletic event viewable for parents and friends since they couldn't come to athletic events. And I feel like some of that has carried over to now. We still try to do that. We still try to provide that. Some days we can't, but that's something that we tried to keep doing after COVID, for sure.
And so, was your husband working during this time, and how was his job impacting coming in and out of the house?
He was working, but his job was all remote at the time. So he wasn't going in the office at all. He still works from home. He's lucky.
And so, next question, how did your daughter feel putting the mask on initially? Did she struggle with it? And how did you also feel putting the mask on?
I didn't mind putting the mask on. I had gotten used to it going to my doctor's visits while I was pregnant and things like that. It didn't bother me at all. For her, she didn't really have to start putting it on because she didn't really go out of the house. The time that she had to put it on was when she started kindergarten. So she started kindergarten that fall after. Yep, that fall after, and she had to wear a mask. Did she start kindergarten then? No, she started kindergarten the next year. But she still had to wear a mask for kindergarten even the next year. So yeah, she didn't have to wear a mask until like that following year because she really wasn't in stores and things like that. I just was doing pickup orders and stuff. If she went to the doctor, she would put one on. But she was easier to get one on than my son. He would rip his off at the doctor's office. And I didn't understand how they thought that he was going to keep it on. He was like one. It was like his 1 year checkup. And they were like, he has to put on a mask. He's one now. I was like, yeah, right.
How did you go about explaining that to him as to why he had to put it on?
You know what? He knew what it was because he had seen us and everybody else wearing them. So I honestly think he thought, like in his mind, it was normal for people to have them on. Because that's all he ever saw. When we went out of the house or we went anywhere, all he saw was people in masks for like the first year of his life. And so, but he didn't have to put one on. So when I put it on him, he wasn't comfortable with it. He would pull it off. He just kept pulling it off, or he was playing with it, or he just didn't want it on. But he knew what it was. He just didn't want it on.
So you said in your hand map activity that one thing that you gained from the pandemic was perspective. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes. So what I mean by that is I feel like it put like everything in my life in perspective. So it was kind of like a aha moment, like, okay, these things are not important, but my family is important. My kids are important. Like it just kind of was like me putting that list of things that's really important to me together and focusing on those things at that time. And even now I still try to focus on those things. And I don't get upset about little stuff anymore because it's just not important. Like once you go through something like that and you see friends and family dying or losing loved ones and things like that, it just puts a lot of things into perspective. And I was blessed enough to not lose anybody in my immediate family like some people did. And so it just puts lots of things into perspective because lots of people lost everything during that time. So
how did your relationships with your family and friends change throughout the pandemic? Like, especially with like meeting your son or like getting your son to know like his family?
Yeah. So the whole vaccination process, some of my family wanted to get vaccinated, some of them didn't. And I just had to make the decision when he was younger during that first year that I just could not have him around people that weren't vaccinated. Like I just couldn't do it. He couldn't get vaccinated, so the people around him I felt like needed to be to protect him. And just, especially with so much still not known with what was going on, I feel like we were getting bits and pieces, but we still didn't know. Nobody really knew how it affected babies at that time. And so I just had to make those hard decisions. And I feel like most family understood that, especially when it comes to a baby's life. Like, they're not going to push that. But it was a while before, like, family was able to meet him. You know, usually you have a newborn, everybody comes to visit. And so that was different for sure. A lot of my friends still have not met him. So...
So now that we're here, we're not wearing masks, campus is lively, we're in spring season now, March 2023 is on the way. How did it look like when you were, you know, on the courts and there was no fans, and then now there's so many people on campus? Like what kind of like how does that make you feel?
So
the difference, the change.
Yeah, I feel like honestly this year is probably the first year since all of that happened where we've really been just fully open and fully had fans in the stands, fans everywhere, where it feels like it's back to normal, if you want to call it normal. But this was the first year, and I don't think we really realized it until kind of basketball season hit. And we looked around, we were like, especially that Marshall game, like it was packed in there. And it hadn't been packed like that in years, and certainly not the past few years where we had like, even when we started letting last year, it was still just pass list only. And you would see like specks of people in the stands. And so it definitely felt like I hate to say like we made it through it moment, but it kind of did because we hadn't seen that in years. And so it was definitely exciting to see, especially with this transition for it to happen and coincide with us being able to welcome fans back to games and things like that. I definitely think it adds to the atmosphere of a collegiate athletic event. It didn't really feel the same without the fans there, and you don't realize it until the fans are back and you're like, this is what it's supposed to be like. So
Will you talk a little bit about the women's soccer inaugural Division I game, how they broke that record of fan attendance at Dixon Field? What was that like as compared to the soccer season in the spring of 2021 where there was no fans at all? How'd that make you feel?
It was probably twofold because I'll say because with it being the inaugural Division I event here and having people show up and like pack the stands for that game was amazing. The fact that it was a women's event to kick it off, also amazing. And for them to fill the stands like that for a women's soccer game, I just thought it was great. It was a great night. Did we win? No. But did we win? Yes. You know what I mean? So I thought it was amazing. I loved it. I thought it was great. The community showed up. We weren't even in session. We hadn't even started the semester yet. So we had our backs up against the wall trying to get fans there anyway because we didn't have the students to rely on. And so to have over 800 people out there to watch a women's collegiate soccer game was just great, in my opinion. And then all the kids that were out there, I thought that was just great. Like all the little girls out there running around watching collegiate women's soccer players that they were looking up to. I don't think it could have been a better atmosphere that night. I thought it was great. And compared to the 2021 spring, it was like night and day because, 2021 spring, we were like drinking water from a fire hose. Like, honestly, like I couldn't tell when one game ended and the next one started. But we were definitely excited to be playing that semester, but it was a blur for sure.
I have chills. Okay, final question. What does the future look like for Charlotte, for Queens Athletics? Like, how have we grown, and how are you, putting the pieces together for this institution, for this county?
I see Charlotte just being the greatest backdrop for this university, honestly. Where this university is going with the vision of our current president, Lugo, and with our AD, Sherry Swartout, I definitely think, we're growing with the transition to Division I, with us joining the ASUN. I definitely think our brand is getting out there. It's getting in more faces. It's only going to help us grow. With this growing city we have, I think we're only going to keep attracting more students. We're going to keep attracting amazing athletes. And I think, a lot of people were nervous with the transition. Like, is Queens going to keep winning? And I feel like winners always find a way to win. Like, they always find a way to win. It may take a couple years for us to get back there. It may take some time. It may take some time to fill in the pieces that we need, but we're going to figure it out. I definitely think we're going to figure it out, and I feel like Queens is here to stay, and people just better watch out.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was awesome.